I stared at my phone, reading the message from my mother, Lorraine, in our family group chat. Don't come to Quinn's wedding. You and the kids make things awkward. Seconds later, my sister Quinn added, too much drama. Please stay home. I stood there in the parking lot, my hand trembling, not from anger, but from the sudden clarity. They had never wanted me. They only wanted my money, never my presence. I grew up in a house where favoritism wasn't subtle, it was the air we breathed. Quinn was always the golden child, the prodigy, the one mother introduced with pride while the rest of us orbited around her spotlight. She had ballet recitals with costumes imported from France, weekend art classes, and week-long summer camps that cost more than our monthly mortgage. Every hobby she touched was celebrated like destiny. Me? I slept in the laundry room because Quinn needs the bigger space for her creativity. I worked at a coffee shop at 14 to buy my own school uniforms. When I asked if I could take a photography class, Lorraine laughed and said, "Sweetheart, you're the practical one. You don't need extras." And every year, on my birthday, whatever small celebration I might have had was absorbed into some party for Quinn's latest achievement, her art wins, her performances, her college acceptances. I learned early that my needs were optional. They always said I was strong enough not to need anything. "You're the tough one," they'd repeat, as if it were a compliment. As if toughness made me immune to neglect. When I reached adulthood, that toughness somehow translated into financial responsibility for everyone else. It started small. Lorraine slipped one day and injured her shoulder. I paid the medical bills. Then Ray, my stepfather, lost his job for a short period, and I covered their car insurance just until things stabilized. That 3 months turned into 3 years. Quinn maxed out her credit card when her boyfriend left her, and I stepped in. Lorraine said, "She's too emotional to deal with this right now. You're better at handling stress." Better at handling stress. That was their code for, you can carry everyone. The worst part wasn't the money. It was the utter absence of appreciation. Quinn never thanked me. Lorraine would only say, "Family helps each other, it's natural, isn't it?" Natural apparently meant one direction only. Then I had my children. 2 beautiful, chaotic, curious little humans who became my entire world. And my family barely noticed. They visited only once after each birth, more interested in inspecting my house than holding the babies. Any messages I received from them afterward were transactional, requests for money, for help, for a favor, just this one time. Never a call asking how the kids were. Never a birthday present. Never a simple, "How are you holding up?" 6 months ago, everything escalated. Quinn called me in a panic about her dream wedding venue. She needed a deposit to secure the date, and she insisted she couldn't trust anyone else to help her. "You're the responsible one," she said. "You always save the day." And I did. I put down the deposit, signed the paperwork, and paid the initial fees. They called me a hero. They treated me with affection for the first time in years, temporarily, of course. The shift came gradually but unmistakably. Quinn began leaving me out of wedding group texts. Lorraine avoided giving me details. When I asked if they needed help with planning, they brushed me off. "We've got it," they said, their voices clipped, almost annoyed. The closer the wedding date got, the more distant they became. Looking back, the signs were obvious. I had served my purpose, I'd paid. After that, my existence became inconvenient again. Still, I tried to rationalize it. I told myself they must be stressed or overwhelmed. I told myself family dynamics were messy. I told myself it didn't matter if I wasn't included, as long as my children were. But even my kids were an afterthought to them. Lorraine once referred to my daughter as a handful because she asked too many questions. Quinn called my son wild because he spilled juice on her couch. They always seemed uncomfortable around them, as if the presence of children disrupted the perfect picture they wanted to paint of family life. The truth clicked into place slowly, painfully. I wasn't invited into their moments of joy. I was only summoned for their moments of crisis. My value depended entirely on what I could pay for, not who I was. And then came the text, 8 cold, dismissive words. Don't come to Quinn's wedding. You and the kids make things awkward. It wasn't the cruelty of the message that broke me, it was the clarity. 6 months earlier, I was the hero they needed. Now, I was an embarrassment they wanted to hide. That was the moment I realized something I had spent decades avoiding. I had never truly been part of my family. Not in the way that mattered. Not in the way I had hoped. They didn't want my presence, only my money. I called Lorraine that same afternoon, my voice shaking, not from fear, but from the kind of simmering disbelief that comes only after years of swallowing hurt. I asked her why I was being told not to come to my own sister's wedding. She let out a light, almost irritated laugh. Sweetheart, you're overreacting. We're just trying to avoid making the guests uncomfortable. I felt my throat tighten. Uncomfortable how? What exactly about me or my kids is so uncomfortable? Before she could respond, Quinn snatched the phone, her voice sharp and impatient. Your kids are loud. And honestly, you always make everything about you. I'm not risking my wedding day turning into some chaotic circus. I just stared at the wall, numb. I had paid for the deposit on her dream venue. I had bailed her out of debt more times than anyone in that house cared to acknowledge. I had missed work shifts, missed sleep, missed entire chapters of my own life to make theirs easier. And now I was being cast as the problem. I didn't scream. I didn't defend myself. I didn't remind her of the grocery bags I delivered when she couldn't afford food or the time I babysat her kids for 4 straight days while she found herself on a yoga retreat. I didn't say any of it. I just sat there, holding the phone, listening to my family turn me into a burden simply because I no longer fit the picture-perfect narrative of the daughter who paid for everything quietly. Word spread through the family group in minutes. Cousins, aunts, and a few people I hadn't spoken to since high school were suddenly chiming in. Don't make this about you, Harper. It's Quinn's big day. You know you caused drama without meaning to. You forgot where you came from. That last one stung the most, because the truth was, I remembered exactly where I came from. I remembered every time Lorraine chose Quinn's comfort over my needs. I remembered every holiday where I was the one cleaning up while Quinn opened gifts. I remembered being told to be understanding, while Quinn was praised for simply existing. And now, the narrative was simple: Quinn was the victim, I was the villain. Later that night, after putting my kids to bed, I opened my phone and saw a private message from Quinn. You don't really fit in with everyone anyway. You know that, right? It was like she had taken every unspoken insecurity I had carried since childhood and distilled it into a single sentence. The message wasn't angry or emotional. It was casual, like she was stating a fact everyone but me already knew. As if my whole life had been one long inconvenience. I sat there in the dark, surrounded by the soft breathing of my kids, and for the first time I let myself ask the question I had avoided for decades. Why am I fighting so hard to buy love from people who don't want me in the room? My son rolled over in his sleep and reached for my hand. My daughter murmured something about wanting pancakes for breakfast. In that moment, the contrast hit me harder than any insult my family had thrown at me. My kids loved me without conditions. My family loved me only when I was useful. That difference split something open inside me. As the house settled and quieted around us, a memory flickered back into my mind, one I had pushed away weeks earlier. The wedding venue. The glamorous estate with white pillars, a glass ballroom, and a lake view. The one Quinn had begged me to secure. The one she said she couldn't live without. The one with a deposit so large I had needed to rearrange my entire monthly budget. I was the one who signed the contract. My name was on the invoice. My credit card held the booking. Not Quinn's. Not Lorraine's. Mine. And suddenly, the question wasn't why they didn't want me there. The question was, why was I paying for a seat I wasn't even allowed to sit in? The anger that rose inside me wasn't explosive, it was quiet, steady, almost cold. The kind of anger that forms only when humiliation meets clarity. For the first time in a long time, I felt myself stand up, emotionally, mentally, out of the corner they had pushed me into since childhood. They didn't want me at the wedding. Fine. But they were about to learn what it meant to cut someone off who had been holding up the entire structure. When I told Mara what had happened, I expected sympathy. Maybe outrage. Maybe a hug and a glass of cheap grocery store wine. What I didn't expect was the sharp, immediate truth she fired back at me. They don't want you, Harper. They want what you provide. Your presence has never mattered to them, only your contributions. And now that they think they've drained you dry, you've become disposable. Her words hit like a punch, not because they were harsh, but because they were the first honest assessment anyone in my life had dared to give me. Check the contract, she said. Check everything. People like them don't just take, they plan to take. So that night, after the kids went to bed and the house fell silent, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, a cup of cold coffee, and a growing sense of dread. The deeper I dug, the worse it became. In the venue's online portal, I found an email thread, one I had never seen before. Sent from my mother's address. Signed with my name. She had requested a budget extension for the wedding decor, asking the coordinator to go ahead with upgrades. Upgrades I did not approve. Upgrades I did not even know existed. Then came the bank notifications. Buried in statements I rarely checked because I trusted them, stupidly, blindly trusted them, I found several transactions linked to the secondary card I had once given Quinn for emergencies. Charges that told an ugly story. Her wedding dress. Her photographer deposit. A weekend bridal spa trip at a luxury resort. Custom floral arrangements for the rehearsal dinner. Nearly $7,000. All funneled through a card she was never supposed to use. Every transaction tagged under family support as if my financial suffering was a built-in obligation. I forwarded everything to Mara. She called back within 5 minutes. Harper, this isn't just boundary crossing. This is exploitation. This is theft. I didn't cry. Not then. I just felt an icy calm wash over me, like my body was finally catching up to something my heart had known for years. The next morning, I met with my lawyer, Mr. Cray, a man whose expression never changed no matter the chaos you dropped into his lap. After reviewing the documents, he leaned back, fingers steepled. These signatures are forged. The spending pattern is intentional. And legally, you're on the hook unless we take action. I felt something inside me snap, not emotionally, but logically. A switch flipping from self-blame to absolute clarity. My entire life, I had been told I was too sensitive, too dramatic, too needy. But here, in cold numbers and forged signatures, was the truth. It wasn't me. It had never been me. I was not imagining the betrayal. I was not creating the distance. I was not misunderstanding the dynamic. I simply wasn't meant to be part of their family, only part of their budget. And once that realization settled fully into my bones, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. I closed my laptop, breathed in the quiet of my own home, and made the decision that would change everything. For once in my life, I wasn't choosing them. I was choosing me. I called the event coordinator the next morning, my voice steady in a way it hadn't been in months. I want the entire reservation cancelled, I said. I'm the name on the contract. There was a brief pause on the other end, then a soft, "Of course, Miss Cole. We'll process that immediately." And just like that, Quinn's meticulously curated, thousands of dollars dream wedding evaporated. The chandeliers, the floral arch, the rooftop champagne hour, all gone with a single phone call. But I didn't stop there. Instead of letting the venue sit empty on that date, I transferred the reservation to two of my closest friends, Callie and Rowan, who had postponed their wedding during the pandemic and never had the funds to do it right. When I told them, Callie burst into tears. Rowan hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. "This is the nicest thing anyone has ever done for us," they said. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the warmth of doing something meaningful, not out of obligation, but out of choice. Meanwhile, chaos detonated in my family group chat. Lorraine called me 42 times. Quinn fired off messages so fast my phone heated up. "You ruined my life. You are sick. You owe me a wedding, you OWE me." Then Megan chimed in, as she always did, adding gasoline to the fire. "You always make everything about yourself. Grow up." My phone buzzed nonstop for hours until finally, a message from Lorraine appeared. "We're having a family meeting tonight. Fix this." They had spent years assuming I would always come running. They had no idea the person they used to control didn't exist anymore. I arrived at the meeting with my lawyer, Mr. Cray. You could have heard a pin drop when he stepped in behind me. Quinn shrieked first. "Why is there a lawyer here?" I sat down calmly, opened a thick folder, and placed it on the table. "Because," I said, "I'm done being bullied into paying for people who don't want me in the room." Lorraine clutched her chest dramatically. "Sweetheart, we were joking. You take everything too seriously." I slid photographs, bank records, and signed documents across the table. "These are the upgrades you added under my name. These are the unauthorized charges on my card. This is the fake signature you used to approve the decor expansion." Lorraine froze. Quinn stood up as if she'd been slapped. Megan stared at the paperwork like it was written in another language. "You can't do this," Quinn hissed. "You owed me a beautiful wedding." "No," I said, looking her directly in the eye. "I owed you nothing." I listed, one by one, every major expense I had shouldered over the years: medical bills, car insurance, emergency loans, credit card rescues. Thousands upon thousands of dollars. "Not once," I said, "did any of you say thank you. You didn't want me at your wedding. So now? You don't get the wedding I paid for." Quinn burst into tears. Lorraine tried to shift blame to Megan. Megan blamed Quinn. Ray blamed miscommunication. Watching them unravel, pointing at each other, spinning excuses, it was almost surreal. For years, they had stood united in using me. Now they could barely stand to look at each other. When the shouting reached its peak, I stood. "This meeting is over." Lorraine called after me, voice cracking. "Harper, wait. We can talk about this." I turned back only once. "No. You don't get to uninvite me from your life and keep my wallet. Those days are done." Mr. Cray opened the door for me, and I walked out, calm, steady, powerful. Behind me, the room dissolved into frantic whispers, accusations, and sobbing. The revenge payoff was complete. And for the first time in my life, I walked away without looking back. The fallout from the cancelled venue hit Quinn harder than she ever expected. She scrambled to book a replacement, but the only place available on such short notice was a dim, outdated banquet hall off a noisy highway. The carpet smelled of mildew, the lighting flickered, and half the chairs were mismatched. On the day of the ceremony, a storm rolled through, thunder shaking the windows, rain flooding the flimsy outdoor platform they'd planned to use for photos. Guests left early, soaked and irritated. Videos of the soggy decorations, collapsing archway, and a groomsman slipping in a puddle spread online before the night was even over. The wedding Quinn had spent years fantasizing about became a local spectacle, one everyone talked about for all the wrong reasons. That night, Rick, my stepfather, called me. His voice was tired in a way I had never heard before. "Harper," he said softly, "you didn't deserve any of this. Not the way they treated you. Not today. Not for the last 20 years. He confessed that he'd finally hit his limit with Lorraine's manipulation and favoritism. After witnessing how gleefully she blamed me for the failed wedding, ignoring all the ways she'd contributed to the disaster, he packed a bag and left. "I can't stay with someone who twists everything good into something ugly," he said. "You were the only one in that family who ever treated me like a real person." A few days later, he transferred a small amount of money into my account as an attempt to repay a fraction of what I had covered over the years. I called to tell him I didn't want it, but he insisted. "You've never taken advantage of anyone," he said. "Let me do one right thing." After that, I focused on rebuilding my life, this time on my terms. My home felt quieter, warmer. My days weren't filled with sudden demands, guilt-laced phone calls, or financial emergencies that were never mine to solve. I spent weekends exploring parks with my kids, cooking real meals, laughing without tension in my shoulders. Work became easier when I wasn't carrying emotional debt on my back. For the first time, the world didn't feel heavy. For the first time, I could breathe. And for the first time, I felt free. I ended my story with the truth I had spent years too afraid to speak. "Revenge isn't always about destroying someone," I said. "Sometimes, it's choosing not to let them destroy you anymore. Because if you've ever been treated like the last choice, like a walking bank account, like someone whose value begins and ends with what you can provide, you are not alone. Family is not a place where you must purchase affection with sacrifice. Family is where you are seen, appreciated, and loved for who you are, not for what you give." If this story resonates with you, share it. If you've lived something similar, drop a comment. And subscribe for more family revenge stories, stories that remind you that walking away is sometimes the bravest, most powerful thing you can do.